Welcome back, Red Spotters. I'm Alexis Soto, your host today. This is Red Spotlight Entertainment. I'm joined today by Alexys Moreno and Peter Martinez. And this is going to be a little out of the ordinary in one way, but it really isn't if you've listened to our recent podcasts. This is going to be different in tone considering what is happening right now in the country that we reside in, which is America. If you've watched the news, you know what's going on. It's been a week. The recording of this podcast has been a week since the murder, as it's been rightfully labeled, of George Floyd in Minneapolis at the hands of police officers, and a week's long, I think at this point, over a week's long of peaceful protests / riots have occurred, with countless incidents trickling in on social media and on broadcast television about fires, vandalism, police brutality, and politicians and their remarks. And it's gotten to the point where this was never going to really be ignored by us, because that's not how we roll. We kind of just say what we feel and what we think, even if it isn't warranted in a lot of cases. But I think I speak for all of us when this was just an inevitability that this was going to come up, because it is so important. And I do want to make it clear here that Alexis reached out to me over the weekend, and she really was an advocate for talking about this on the show, because it's, and I can only assume, has deeply affected her, seeing the imagery and what is happening. And to be fair and to warn listeners right now, it will get uncomfortable. A lot of the things that we're going to talk about. It's not, for the most part, going to be fun discussing these things. And I want to address that at the top, because we are a podcast and a network of podcasts that is primarily concerned with talking about film and television, because that's what our passions are. That's what we love to talk about and to consume. Practically every moment of our lives. It's what the foundation of all of our friendships are, is the commonality between these pieces of art, shall we say, for lack of a better term, that we like to discuss, and that we've done for several years now, 6 years as a matter of fact. But because we are of that variety or brand, and I've seen this being thrown out there on social media these last few days, that people are getting upset for outlets who are not part of the brand for news or politics. They're getting attacked for even commenting on the issue at hand. And Peter and I and Kyle and Moreno and David have always said, and in fact always defended our tendency to insert politics into certain conversations. The fact that the medium of film and cinema has always been inherently political, and it always will be, because it always has been. Everything in our lives, whether we realize it or not, is political. Having an opinion of any kind is political. And so I reject the argument at hand that if you are not, let's say, a weekly podcast, a weekly political podcast, then you have no right to talk about what is going on in the world. Because that's just not who we've been. We've never really done that. Ever since we started recording all those years ago, we've always had to comment on the world around us and how it's made us feel. Because part of why I think I love doing this so much is you're getting who we are. You know, this is what we think, and we're not necessarily filtered by any kind of corporation or overseers. We're entirely independent. We do this for free. Well, we do this for therapy, to be real with you. I mean, this is a very cathartic experience to be able to broadcast our inner emotions into whoever is willing to listen. And that's why we kind of do this, and we have been doing this. But I also, just from another standpoint, to, get this out of the way with, because I know that a few weeks ago I have talked about this conflict of interest, I guess you could say, about talking about politics in this kind of a show that we do. By just reminding people and ourselves, really, in the last 6 years, the kind of stories that we've talked about that are very much grounded in the reality of the film industry and film. And that I've had many a conversation with Peter about being trepidatious in certain kind of shows and how we want to handle ourselves. Not that we want to tiptoe around a story, but we realize that on some level, we're not entirely qualified to speak to certain people's perspective and experiences when it comes to, let's say, stories of discrimination. And so we've always done our best to acknowledge that up front, that we're not necessarily professionals here. We're just people that have views. For example, when the Me Too movement exploded years ago, it affected very much what was going on in the film industry because of Harvey Weinstein and Kevin Spacey and all those people. And when that happened, we just felt that while it was uncomfortable because it was a podcast that was primarily, made and featured men, it was uncomfortable to talk about that because we felt that it just wasn't for us to say, really.
I remember that. I was like, I don't know if we should.
That's what I said. And I think Alexis was busy or someplace else at the time, so she
didn't want to be there.
I don't think so. Maybe not. So that was hard to do. And our good friend Nettie Valdez of the show over the years agreed to be on that show to give us some kind of, out or clout, shall we say, to have an opinion on such matters. And I thought that she was very useful in that discussion because she brings forth a different experience than the rest of us. She is a filmmaker and has been involved in several film projects that I don't think the rest of us can speak to. And she has experienced those things of not only just being seeing predatory behavior in the workplace as she, as a filmmaker, but also talking about, we've had shows where she's come on and she's talked about the sexism that she's experienced while being a film student in San Diego, of all places, which is normally seen as a liberal area of the country and the world. So that's one example. Another example is last year, I believe it was last year, we reviewed the documentary film Leaving Neverland, which featured heavily the controversy of Michael Jackson's accusations of sexually molesting children. And that was just not something Peter and I wanted to even get into. That was like, do we really want to touch that? But I just kept coming back to that. Well, this is a movie that deeply affected us so much that we just have to talk about it. And we tried our best to maneuver that conversation. But it was, I think, without question, one of the most uncomfortable podcasts we've ever had to do because of the material at hand. And I think we even said it to ourselves in that show. We're not going to get into the specific incidents that were alleged to have happened on that documentary because of how graphic they were. So it was hard for us to talk about that. Also, the firing of James Gunn and how that was a move that was motivated by Mike Cernovich, who, if memory serves correct, has been accused of rape and is an alt-right neo-fascist. And Disney rewarded that behavior with the initial firing of those neo-fascists, neo-Nazis.
Well, not firing of the...
I'm sorry, the firing of Gunn. The firing of Gunn in some way validated the concerns of those neo-Nazis. We've talked about the merger of 20th Century Fox. And while most outlets were just fine talking about the possibilities of X-Men or Deadpool, we chose to focus on what that meant for the real people working in the industry. What does that mean for movie theaters? What does that mean for literally over tens of thousands of people who were fired because of that merger? While other outlets were just, fine ignoring that as a reality. The real human cost of these things is the common thread. And if you've noticed, these are very political stories, but they're very much part of the film industry. The fact that movie theaters are going to open up again in the middle of COVID-19. Now we may be even more critical of movie theaters, or not, depending on how it is. Fandom. How many times have we waded into fandom? And while usually that conversation is mostly surrounded based on small quibbles of canon or continuity, we've also been one of the few places that has mentioned the fact that, huge swaths of the fandom, like the anti-Last Jedi movement, for example, been co-opted by the alt-right movement. They've kind of been susceptible to radicalization by the alt-right. And for the toxicity that has been at hand, how every single time that a movie with a female lead like Brie Larson comes out, there's a controversy like, how dare you have a woman lead a movie? We've talked about that. We've talked about also the neoliberals and their incessant paranoia and hysteria propping up Joker as some kind of a thing that's going to spark a mass shooting. We Peter and I were even critical of the media, almost cheering on having a mass shooting coincide with the release of Joker. And that was just, what the fuck? We've talked about the Oscars and the politics at hand there. The Oscars So White movement happened while we were recording this podcast years ago. I know Peter is smiling.
What happened to that
Shut
video
up.
for you?
We have podcasts. We don't do videos, honey.
That's true.
The Academy Awards and the inherent politics within that system and the discrimination and the hierarchy and the elitism and all that sense. I've even delved into off projects from Red Spotlight and talking about the discrimination of Asian Americans in the film industry. All of this is to say that we've always been a show where we're not afraid to acknowledge the realities, the disparities, and the politics at hand that happen in this industry. And we're not going to stop now at all, because like it or not, this affects everything. And a big part of what we're going to be talking about today is that everything happening right now, the new depression, the pandemic, the riots, it's all connected. So this is episode 230. That was your extended intro for what this is going to be. I guess a little bit of a defense before people start attacking why we're talking about this in the first place.
David would never attack us like that.
So, yeah. I'm going to open it up to whoever wants to start off talking about what is going on. I guess the proper place to start is with Alexis and asking her, because you messaged me over the weekend about wanting to do this show. At what was the point where it's just okay, enough, I have to say something about this?
I mean, we should probably describe what this is.
Yes. Didn't I say what was happening, the riots and the police brutality? I mentioned that at the top, didn't I?
But did you say what sparked
it?
Yeah,
George Floyd. Yeah,
okay.
I mentioned all that in the beginning.
That was half an hour ago, okay?
15 minutes, give me a break. Not half an hour. 15 minutes. I mentioned at the top that it was a 1-week anniversary of George Floyd having been assassinated by cops, and we've had a week of riots and police brutality.
Murdered,
correct. So, unless, Peter, you'd like to go into more detail about that, I gave just the basics about what happened and why and what's going on.
No, just, the basics are there, obviously. Well, the issue is everyone saw it it was caught on video. You could clearly, like, the whole nation saw someone die in front of their eyes. And
viciously,
like,
by the way, very viciously, maybe more so than the other one. Like, you had the imagery of this man, this poor man, with a cop's knee on his neck and pressuring that knee on his neck.
And, you know, despite the fact that he wasn't resisting, he wasn't trying, you know, to get up or run away. Literally all he was saying was like, hey, I can't breathe, like, please, like, pleading for his life. And, you know, one cop with his knee on his neck, and then a few others standing around. I want to make it very clear that, you know, everything that's going on right now isn't solely because of this one incident. This one incident is just sort of the powder keg that set off what's been building for years, months, years, decades. And no matter what has happened in the past, it just seems like nothing fixes it, you know? Something like this happens, people go, oh, what a shame, and then they move on.
Kind of like anything else in the country when it comes to mass shootings.
Yeah.
Very similar to that regard.
It's similar to mass shootings.
Which we just had one, I think, 2 weeks ago in Arizona?
Yeah, I believe so. Well, I mean, the largest mass shooting in American history happened, what was it, a year?
Well, in the last 3 years. First it was Orlando, and then it was topped a year later by Las Vegas.
Yeah. Just
so easily.
And then people just kind of like, oh, yeah. So this is, I guess I want to make it clear that this isn't something that just
came out of nowhere.
Happened. You know, it doesn't come out of nowhere. And I think a lot of it's hard for some people to comprehend that this is something that is built. It is, you know, heat. It's like a volcano. It just gathers underground, the pressure builds, and then it bursts out. Yeah.
To add more context to it, just to be completely clear, is especially coming off the last decade, the 2010s saw the rise and birth of the Black Lives Movement because of Trayvon Martin, Eric Gardner. You may have recognized those names in the past.
Mm-hmm. And I want to make clear, while I think we all don't have the kindest feelings towards our current president, Mr. Trump.
Yeah, we don't.
This doesn't begin and end with
Of course
Trump.
not.
Like, Black Lives Matter, you know, as it's been said many times, started under a black president.
Let me just tease something real quick. I have a massive quote by the brilliant Dr. Cornel West. He had an appearance.
Oh, I love him.
An appearance on CNN this past week on with Anderson Cooper, and I think it was a moment of clarity and a moment as to what is happening right now and everything that's wrong. And he's been one of the few, if only, people that has criticized everyone, not just, you know, laying it at the feet of one political party. So, and I'll be sharing that quote later on in the show because it's a fairly long quote, and I've already spoken for like half an hour, as you say. But you are correct, though, that we come at it from also a perspective of not being one-sided. I think it's no secret that, well, I'll speak for me and Peter. If you've listened to the show for a good amount of time, you know what our political leanings are. But we've never really been the kind of people that have, let's say, withheld criticism of people who are even aligned with our interests. So it is a fact to say that everybody's going to get a lot of shit from us in this podcast. It's not, and it should not be framed as, oh, this is because of Trump, or this is because of conservatives. It's because of a lot of things. Go ahead.
I really hate when people say that. I'm going to start off by saying, you know, I love my dad. He's great.
I love your dad too.
Yeah, I don't really care.
But he
got me pizza.
He did?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, we've been disagreeing a lot, like, as of late.
This is after COVID-19, and you guys had some issues there, it seems.
Yes. And like one of the things that he says is, you know, because he gets into arguments with my aunt a lot, because she just like does not hold back on him. But like one of the things that he constantly says is like, oh, everybody like blames Trump, blah blah blah, but it's like that's not what it's about. Like, it's not about him. Nobody is blaming him for what happened, but he's not making the situation better.
Yeah.
Like, that's what everybody, I feel, gets mad at, because instead of, you know, like, saying, first of all, the 3 cops that were involved should have already gone arrested, but instead nothing has happened.
Only one of them, and I think, was arrested.
And he hasn't said anything about that, and it's like that's what people are mad at, that he doesn't acknowledge the bad things and he just encourages it more.
Trump is like if you had a huge gaping wound and then he came over and just poured salt into it.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't cause the wound.
Yeah.
But he sure as hell isn't helping.
One commentator put it really nicely, is that Trump never misses an opportunity to pour gasoline on the fire.
Yeah, it's that kind of thing. And it's where you would want a leader. Like, I'll put it this way. As far as Obama goes, there's a lot of disagreements I had with him. I don't think he was the best president. Well, it's weird. I think he's easily the best president in my lifetime.
I guess you can make the case he's the best of the 21st century. Yeah,
but I also think I don't know, I have really high standards in that area. But I mean, he's especially in this way, he's very good at speaking to the concerns of what people feel, and at the very least calming, not adding fuel to the fire.
Remember, he was very good. One of his low points, as Obama says himself, of his presidency was Sandy Hook Elementary and the mass shooting that happened there in Newtown, Connecticut. And one of the moments of the country looked to him was him also being overcome with emotion over the fact that 6-year-old children were gunned down with rifles.
When scary shit like this is happening in the country, I at the bare minimum, people want to look to their leaders and feel as if
they're being validated.
Or at the very least, their concerns are being validated. Yeah. And Obama was insanely good at that. And Trump is literally out here, opposite. You know, once the looting starts, the shooting starts. Like,
immediately when I couldn't believe that tweet. You know what? There have been a lot of tweets with President Trump. Let's be clear about that. But that was a beauty in, as he says it, that was just, there are no words to really describe how inappropriate that was, to put it mildly. When the looting starts, the shooting starts. The way that he even tweeted over the weekend about there being vicious dogs that would have awaited the protesters had they climbed the White House fence, or that would have been gas ready for them. Like, he talks about these things as if he's excited for violence.
Yeah.
That tweet we talked about, when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Twitter, by the way, is horrible when it comes to censoring anything. But even they, like, flagged that tweet for glorifying violence. That's how bad it was. When the looting starts, the shooting starts. Like, holy shit. He talking about shooting civilians, by the way. And we're on the precipice, the recording of this podcast. The president gave a quick White House address, a press conference, where he threatened military use if the governors wouldn't step up and calm down the riots, practically declaring war on the American people. Every situation, he just makes it worse. He after that, by the way, when he made that announcement earlier tonight, he had like the military police clear the peaceful protesters outside the White House. They weren't rioting. They were just standing there. And he had the military police throw tear gas at them and charge at them. And then when they were cleared, he walked to a nearby church, held up a Bible, which of all, him holding a okay, and what was that supposed to mean? Like, everything he does only makes the situation worse than it was before. Everything he does and says, and you have to probably think that some part of him likes being that kind of a chaos force, because that's kind of what his whole life has been. He's just nothing but chaos. That's the one word you can describe his entire presidency: chaotic, completely chaotic.
Going all the way back to what Alexis was saying about disagreeing, it's difficult right now, because I think for many, many decades, and I think I've talked about this before, and the Trump presidency really kicked this up, is people have always been content to go, politics is nasty, it can be rude, so we just don't bring that up around each other. Religion, people don't really like to talk about that, so we don't talk about it around each other. A lot of different things, like, sex, politics, religion, mainly those, it's like those are things that it's kind of an unspoken rule. You don't talk about it because people can get angry, it gets very personal, and it's just almost seen as rude behavior to talk about it, like talking about money or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that it did a real disservice to everyone, because it just sort of, we never talked to each other. We just sort of let our own beliefs and ideas just ferment in our mind without actually reaching out and having these discussions with each other. But then after Trump got elected and shit got real heated, everyone's just like, oh, I didn't even realize the people that were around me, and maybe I didn't really think all that much about the things I said or believed, but now I'm thinking a lot about them.
Yeah. Well, that's how I am.
Yeah.
My dad tried, but he didn't try hard enough.
But it's also, a lot of people kind of don't, most people, right? Like most people don't pay attention to like, it's the most base level attention. And again, I think that's the vast majority of people. And I just think that's just kind of, like, I think I'm weird.
Yeah.
I'm the weird one for, like, hyper-focusing on all this shit all the time. Because, like, most people, especially you talk to them, it's like, not whatever, but it just doesn't cross their mind, really, to even think about. So then when you just sort of get, like, I don't know, stories from Facebook. Facebook is really bad. I've seen what it does. Or, you have, like, very much your point of view. Like, if I just didn't pay attention to politics, I feel, and then, like, just depending on whether I was a police officer or if I lived in a certain state or I was a certain gender or a certain race, I feel like I would just naturally have views, right? Just because of the position where I am, even though I don't really pay attention to that kind of stuff, it just sort of happens, is what I'm saying making sense?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because like, I feel like 99% of the people I talk to are like that, it's like,
which is why it was such a strange coincidence that you and I met. I'll tell you this. Because we're nerds. When Julio introduced us, I couldn't have imagined us getting along so well. We don't get along now.
Well,
I mean, having.
By the way, guys, on the last call we had, he literally said he imagines murdering me. It's crazy.
So when Julio first introduced us, it never.
On the last call, you fell asleep.
That's right. He did fall asleep while I was talking. So that, of course, and that seems to happen a lot. When Julio first introduced us, I couldn't have expected how much we had in common. Not just like a love for film, a love for talking about film, but then also the whole politics thing. Like that I wasn't expecting at all. And for the most part, we don't have, I think you and I, Peter, have a certain dynamic where like we usually agree on everything like 99% of the time. And then that 1%, we just completely clash like entirely.
Pisses me off.
Yeah.
I remember one time, this must have been at the 2016 election.
Well,
I don't even remember
I'm talking
what it
about,
was.
let me be clear. I'm talking about film.
You were like screaming, and then I was screaming at you for politics too.
Well, for politics,
it's like 0.1%.
Okay, sure.
Maybe not 1%.
Sure. It's that the gap is that small, I guess. But yeah, continue with your story. Yeah, we were yelling, I think. We were screaming at each other.
I don't remember what it was, but it was like the smallest thing. And I was like, no, you stupid bitch. This is...
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
I don't know. I assume I was proven right in the end.
That too happens 99% of the time. I only get 0.1% right of anything. So, yeah, that seems to be like the curse or the crux of what we are. But yeah, it was strange because I've never encountered anybody who was as like synchronized as I was when it came to analyzing campaigns and politics on that kind of a level. Like most people I would have even people I've met in like political organizations in San Diego or in DC are not as like and I'm not talking about like viewpoints. I'm talking about just like base level knowledge. Like we come from like if this was like Star Wars, like we're from the backwater planet of Tatooine, and like we know like a lot of like, again, it's not to like
we literally lived in Tatooine.
Yeah, it's not to inflame our egos or like to say that that we're smarter than everybody. No, it's just that we're passionate about politics and we talk about it every day, and we just know a lot.
I guess that's the thing. Like, I'm passionate about politics, I guess, in the same way I'm passionate about Star Wars, right? But like other people are passionate about things that I don't know two shits about. Like, I know people that are so passionate about like cars. Oh yeah, right. Yeah. And my base level knowledge of cars is there's 4 wheels and a motor. Yeah, and I guess a steering wheel sometimes. You know. Sometimes. Right? Like there's so much, or like music. Like we all know people that are just so unbelievably.
And we all know how you don't like music at all. So like,
I like music, but it's just like, I'm not. I guess. So yeah, it's like I hyper, watch a lot of news and I'm into that. I guess the only difference is, it is entertainment basically, in the way, again, because I not hyperventilate, but I obsess over the news in the same way I obsess over Star Wars. The only difference is who gives a fuck about Star Wars knowledge. Like politics is actually important, so and like sports, right? Like I could fuck it, I fall asleep. I played football. You did football in high school, and I can't tell you how that game works.
You played?
Yeah. It was a freshman.
You don't know how the game works and they let you play.
Well, I was not too bad. Well, because all I really knew was like, when they say this, you hit that person. And it's like, well, I can hit someone. Like, yeah. But like, as far as like...
Did you sign up to be a cop or a football player?
What?
I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Did I what?
Did you sign up to be a cop?
Anyways. Did I decide to be?
I don't know. Hitting people. You said about hitting people.
Oh.
Not signing up to hit people. It was okay. Yeah.
But yeah. Because I don't think I agree. Like, I don't think the knowledge is like smart. It's if people like,
it's just your interests.
Yeah, it's interest. I think that's what it comes down to. It's interest. I don't think it's like smart. But I just think one of my interests happens to be important,
because it affects real life events that are happening right now. I mean, just to say from, the the small town that we come from, the small town community, the one that I've always said in some aspects prides itself on being 30 years behind the modern world. 2020 is crazy enough with all of what has happened. With, we began the year with Iran and potential nuclear war. We moved on to, coronavirus, a new depression. Now, these riots, the collapse of Bernie Sanders. There's just so many bad things that have happened this year, to the point that for the first time in recent memory, there's a protest happening right now based on the riots. I mean, the peaceful protests in response to George Floyd's murder. I can't recall a time where real world events have actually come into the Imperial Valley. That alongside coronavirus, which
I was gonna say COVID-19.
I meant to. COVID-19 in a big way has infiltrated the Imperial Valley, our community here. But I think that is to say that when it reaches us, I think you can tell how big this is.
Yeah. But it hasn't even just reached us. Like, it's hit. I've seen demonstrations in like Germany,
yes,
Japan,
international,
all across the world. Because, like, think about it. You're an outsider in comparison to the U.S., right? You live in a different country, not even the same continent away from the U.S. You have a lot of beliefs about the US that probably aren't the best, right? Especially like the little that you might know of our country, probably not the best stereotypes. And then it absolutely doesn't help that Trump is, the president and we elected him. So then when you see the video, because again, it was there for the world to see, and then you see the world's reaction, and then you see video and you see photos. That's a crazy one that I saw on Twitter of the Washington Monument in DC, and then there's just fires on like.
And speaking as somebody who used to live in that town,
different size,
who used to go around that particular area of town quite a bit, who's I think quite familiar with Lafayette Park in front of the White House, and then also the monument right behind it. That is striking. I've seen news clippings today of streets that I used to walk through for projects or assignments that are literally on fire.
And then the news that Trump's in the White House bunker as protests rage outside the White House. Like, that's crazy. That's some Hollywood shit.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy. And especially if you're in a different country and you to see that, like, it's just like, holy shit, so the fact that, even people across the world, sort of stood in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement and pushing back on, the oppressive nature of the system we have here. That's pretty incredible, I think. If there's any bright light in any of this, I think that's one of them, just to throw that out there.
And we should also, because I mentioned earlier about feeling uncomfortable talking about Me Too because none of us were women. And I mean you and I, Peter, not Alexis. She is a woman, so she claims.
She's a lady.
But
lady Floppington.
As it shouldn't be a surprise to say, since we've also addressed our ethnicity in the past, we're not Black. Yeah. We're not of African descent.
None of us here are
We're
Black.
all of Hispanic descent. In fact, I would think that most of our families do originate from Mexico. So, as you can tell from our last names, Soto, Martinez, Moreno, it shouldn't have been that hard to figure out, but I mean, it's pretty Hispanic right there. But I want to go to Alexis right now, because I have something I want to say as well, but I can't let...
She just throws up the piece of...
I can't let myself completely overwhelm this podcast, because then that could possibly happen if it hasn't already. To the original question then, when you texted me and you said, we have to do a show on this. Over the years, I've seen you react to a bunch of shitty things that have happened, a lot of crappy things, and you agreeing with us entirely about how bad they were. But clearly something has changed to where, and I don't think it would be inappropriate to announce this, but you just today registered to vote for the first time.
Yee.
Yeah.
in the state of Arizona, which, congratulations, your vote matters more than Peter and I's vote.
That's true.
Honestly, like, I think that's why I did it. Because
it matters.
Yeah.
Because it matters this time.
Because in Arizona, it is a battleground state from recent polling.
I will say, I am happy that this last primary, I felt as if my vote mattered for the first time in my adult life.
Until it didn't.
Because it was... Well, it did. Well, ultimately, our guy lost, but ultimately it did because California happened soon enough where our vote could make a difference.
Right.
Whereas in 2016, in the primary, by the time you got there to California, it was over. And then in the general, like, really California was in no danger. Either, it was in danger, in which case Hillary wasn't going to win, or it wasn't in danger, in which case, it doesn't matter. But yeah, go ahead. I would still always vote, though, no matter what.
Right. So, Alexis, just talk about, use this time to talk about where your head has been and what has, pushed you to where you are today.
Was it Alexis sharing nonstop stories?
I mean, I've been doing that too. No, but it's just like, as of recent, like I mentioned earlier, like, it's not just with my dad, it's been with, like, my whole family. Like, we've been having all of these conversations, and, I like that one of the things that people are saying is, like, don't just, like, post things, like, have these conversations, like, make sure, like, that, especially, obviously, like, with Hispanic people or Hispanic parents and stuff, like, they tend to be very close-minded.
And let me just be clear.
Well, I think older people
in general, although, I mean, maybe we could probably put Hispanic because, like, our families are overwhelmingly Hispanic, if not entirely Hispanic. I will say, though, just to put the record out there, Peter's family is uncharacteristically Hispanic in that they actually give a shit about politics. So that's the difference, because that's not been my experience at all.
Mine, some of them do, not like all of them.
These are very personal biases, I would say. Our lived experiences.
Correct.
Well, okay, well, talking for me.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And so, like, my parents, they've just made some comments that, like, I don't like. My mom, like, with the whole COVID thing, like, I got her to be like, okay, like, we need to take this seriously, because my dad wasn't taking this seriously, she wasn't, and then I finally had to, like, sit her down and be like, no, like, this is real, and just, like, just by having those conversations, and then, when the George Floyd thing happened, we were sitting down in the living room, and they were gonna do... What are they gonna do? We were watching the news, but it was just, like, randomly, like, it was just gonna be on in, like, the next, like, 5 minutes. The conviction, I think that was what's happening. And the whole time, like, my dad was like, oh yeah, he's gonna, like, he's gonna get arrested, he's gonna go to jail, blah, blah, blah. Because he doesn't agree with, like, what happened. Like, he does think that this guy was murdered, because he was. And I was the one being like, nothing's gonna happen to this guy. Like, have you not been paying attention?
Well, I mean, he eventually did.
Let me be real. I was surprised that he was fired. Because that's how low my expectations are.
Yeah.
Well, what happened was it got on video. People got really mad. So then he got fired. Then people took to the streets then a couple days later, then they, charged him. But I genuinely believe, I have no way of proving this, but I mean, just based on history, if no one was there to record this, literally nothing would have happened.
And we know this for a fact because in just recent weeks, we know about the story that happened in Texas where police force broke into a EMT, and I'm describing her by her race because this is how the news was, an EMT black woman's home. She was asleep in her bed with her boyfriend, and these police officers mistook her for a target that was already in custody. And while she was there sleeping in her bed, they shot her 8 times, and then of course charged her boyfriend by trying to defend her from the bullets for, aggression and, attacking the police and everything. And what came of it? They left the body there. And they really tried to pretend that didn't happen. What came of that? Were any of those police officers fired or charged? Do you not think that was a miscarriage of justice? What was that when you just break into somebody's home, shoot them dead, and walk out? That literally happened in recent weeks. I mean, not that this is... this might have been racially motivated. I can't tell, but we all know the story.
Well, I actually want to touch on that real quick.
Go ahead.
Because a lot of people like to say oh, well, we don't know if the guy, going to George Floyd, we don't know for sure if he was racist or not. And I want to make it clear.
Right.
I don't care. Because it's not whether any one individual is racist or not. It's about a system that allows these things. It's about a racist system,
right,
that allows certain individuals to act a certain way without any repercussions. It's about a system that allows certain people to be over policed, thrown in jail, roughed up, maybe even die along the way, and that viewed as normal. Whether any one individual, even if the officer that killed George Floyd, and again, because it's unless someone is literally wearing a Ku Klux Klan outfit, sig heiling, yelling, "I am a racist," it's almost impossible to know for 100% certainty whether someone is racist. So whether that guy was racist or not, I don't know. All I know is that right now the system allows someone like him to put his knee on someone's neck, have them die in broad daylight, and then nothing happen. Yeah. Unless the country revolts, and then something might happen. That's something the heart of the issue.
Minute might happen.
And then only one officer is charged, not the rest that just stood there and allowed it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's what happened that day. And the whole time I was just telling him nothing is going to happen. Nothing did happen. And he was shocked. And I literally just went, why? Why? It's nothing new. And then the next day, all of the protesting and obviously things got out of hand. Target happened, and they
did have a Target on their store.
Come on.
But no, that's my one. God. That's my one. Okay.
Well,
okay, that's my one.
At least it was somewhat funny. I'm somebody we know who would have.
And they were complaining about the people and what they did, and I understand what they were saying. Obviously, destroying stuff that's not.
It's illegal.
Cool. Yeah. But they kept blaming it on this one incident, and it's have you not been paying attention to what's been going on this entire year?
Years, really. Well, fuck.
I know, but specifically this year, right. It wasn't just this incident. So many things have happened in the past 3 months, even. It was bound to happen.
Yeah.
Something like this was going to happen, and I don't know. It's just kind of keeping the conversation going and hoping that they change their minds, basically, because I don't know.
It's crazy, everything that's going on, right? Because like this is predominantly about Black Lives Matter, and it's specifically speaking to police brutality, the over-policing that a lot of people with a certain skin color experience in this country and have been experiencing for decades, for a long
centuries.
Time. Yeah. They experienced a lot worse, then. But so you have that, but on top of that, you also have extremely high unemployment. You have COVID, which is keeping a lot of the country cooped inside, unable
or killing
to
a lot
make
of
money, or killing a lot of people as well.
105,000, by the way. I should have mentioned this, but 105,000 as of today for COVID-19 deaths in the U.S.
So this is, I want to make it very clear, this movement that you see moving across the country is very much particularly about, Black Lives Matter and that movement, and at the heart of, what that movement means. But then you have these other factors that have just, you can't deny, have been happening during this country that I'm sure add to why this has been so explosive, and there have been people that, I agree, I'm not one for looting, like I'm not gonna sit here and say like, oh yeah, it's awesome to loot,
of course,
but I also think it's sort of ridiculous to focus on that, or to even like take time out of the day to be like, hey guys, you shouldn't be like wag your finger, because again, like these things don't happen out of nowhere,
right?
These are explosive events that happen due to buildup, societal buildup, and like an explosion, it's not going to be concentrated. It's going to be very, very messy.
Similarly to the explosions happening all over the country right now.
Yeah, and I agree. You should do your best to focus in on the message you're trying to say. But there are going to be, I don't know any movement like this that didn't have looting or didn't have,
riots,
cars set on fire, or riots. Like, and I'm not just talking about the United States. I'm talking like across the world. Like, well, when people are attempting to enact change in this way, it's gonna happen. And I think the best thing you can do is, if you're part of the protest, encourage everyone to stay on topic. And when you're discussing this, you stay on topic.
Yeah.
To comment on that, there have been a lot of social media posts in general, but to speak to what you were talking about there, I've seen numerous incidents in which peaceful protesters have been admonishing and attacking those looters that come by and are just there for the sake of looting, and then they're not part of the movement. And we've seen it throughout. People who are just doing a free-for-all, the anarchists that usually come out of whatever is happening just to get something free.
I don't even know if they're not anarchists. They're, a lot of them are just stupid kids that are like, they're taking someone's movement of pain and trying to turn it into a party.
Right, which I think speaks to, how lost our civilization has been so far, but that's an aspect of it. And people who do that, is it wrong to say they're pieces of shit? Because they're not standing for anything. They're just there and they're looting and they're stealing and they're breaking things just for the sake of breaking things. And that's not the people who are peacefully protesting for a movement. And there should be a distinction. As Reverend Al Sharpton, who I would consider a big neoliberal, has said on MSNBC today, the media has done a very poor job of distinguishing between the peaceful protesters and the rioters that are just there for the sake of destruction.
And also, like, I see so much on social media, so much footage of the peaceful protest.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, people just completely peaceful. But you turn on the news, you see none of that.
No.
Why? Because burning buildings sells. You know?
It bleeds, it
and
leads.
At the end, yeah, if it bleeds, it leads. Like, yeah, that's basically what it is. But then, characteristically, you know, sometimes they don't necessarily show. A lot of the times when, you know, it's the protesters being attacked. Sometimes it's you got a lot of airtime to show, you know.
Well, can I just speak to my experience this morning?
Looted, but
this morning, because I'm a night owl, I'm awake at practically.
When he says morning, he means 4 a.m, and he hasn't slept at all.
3 a.m, to be clear here.
Oh, okay.
Because at that point, it's 6 a.m. Eastern time on the East Coast. And
sorry, you're not a Californian anymore.
Fuck off. So I wanted to see what one of the major networks was going to say about what was going on. And wow, I really had high expectations considering what I saw. Let me tell you what happened. So the particular broadcast that I was watching was Morning Joe, MSNBC. I watched 30 minutes of the program. And this is how it began. It began with a clip of Killer Mike, who I love, by the way.
He's amazing.
But they centered on a part of his speech that was propping up a message of there are better ways to get your message out there by organizing rather than rioting. And the majority of the 30 minutes was spent on showing footage of the vandalism, criticizing the riots, by ruining your own message, by allowing this to happen, and then talking about alternative methods for how you can be successful by getting involved in voting and organization and that forth. And then they moved on to criticizing Donald Trump. And in the span of 30 minutes, they tailed it off by, in a single word, I think it was a single line of teleprompter use, they mentioned that while we've seen many incidents of police brutality, then they go to and showing images of, and to the credit of some police officers across the country, standing in solidarity with the protesters by praising the cops. And not a single time, and not a single instance in that 30-minute broadcast did they show a single clip of the disgusting police brutality that we saw on social media every single day for the weekend. They didn't show any of those clips at all.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Whenever they want to show the peaceful side, they show, isn't it great to see, you know, these cops and them, oh, look, these cops got along with these protesters. Like, that's the only peaceful story that they'll talk about. So then at the end of the day, it looks like, oh, the cops are here trying to be peaceful. You know, that's the one side. And then the other side is, but then these crazy looters, you know, they're just stealing from Target. They're stealing from this. They're setting things on fire. So then
today was kind of like the first time that I've seen that they kind of put the blame on the cops, but like not really, because they're also kind of blaming Trump, of like the people who were getting
tear gas,
attacked in front of the White House.
I was watching Noticiero on Univision with my parents, and they did a lot better job than MSNBC of showing the police brutality, like the damn clips and everything. Like, our media fucking sucks in every aspect. And I'm sorry to say this, and you know what? This is just something that's personal to me, because part of me wants to pursue a career in that form, that line of work, but then part of me just wants to ignore it entirely, because I've been around these people. I've been accustomed with their mentality, and it is so striking to me, because in many ways the media is culpable in a lot of the bad things that have happened, not the least of which was getting Trump elected and giving him millions of dollars in free advertisement in 2015 and not broadcasting any other messages but his. And when I was there there was maybe a couple of mentions or glances or here and there about what we could have done better, perhaps. But most of the industry professionals that came in and spoke with us, and as was the attitude of the veterans that were there teaching, was not at all spent on how we can do our job better in terms of getting the facts out there and informing the public. The mentality of them was, I'm not kidding you. This is what I was taught. It is not the place of a reporter or a journalist to educate the American public. It is merely their intent to inform them of the facts. However, they don't mention, of course, in there, but they are really, I guess, for lack of a better word, anal about seeming fair and balanced and objective, and to not, they are far more concerned with appearing partisan than being fair and neutral to the facts.
Fair and balanced.
The deference to the facts, I think, is what really turned me off the most, in that they're never at all critical of their own work. Every single time, you have reporting stories and you have all of these anchors praise the reporters and everything, and I'm like, every single election, we have the same conversation for 2 weeks. What could we have done better to have better helped inform the public about the issues at hand? And then nothing changes. And nothing changes because nobody questions that our news networks like CNN or MSNBC or Fox are owned by corporations with agendas and with ideologies of which they are or diametrically opposed to. Nobody questions the fact that our media, it ain't for free. People make money off of that. And they make money off of that by playing advertisements in their commercial breaks that are against policies like Medicare for All that would be in the better, service of the public and the populace.
Also, not even like, because there is things like that, obviously. But then also simply just, like you said earlier, if it bleeds, it leads.
Yes.
So when you're covering these protests, you're very much more likely to show the rioting, the gas, people burning, setting things on fire. Of course, you're going to show that stuff 24/7 because that's what sells. It's exciting. People are going to tune in and watch, and they're less likely to show 2 hours of people, chanting or sitting silently, in the street, because that doesn't really sell. And for-profit 24-hour news is a bitch. Yeah.
All of that and more. And a further added, we're going to be like going off on all these different tangents, but I think, I swear to you, they're all connected. But this is very important to what you're saying, Peter, about the riots themselves. And let's say peaceful protesters that are moved to, let's say, for example, burn down the police headquarters at Minneapolis. What people don't understand, and what it seems like in my experience, national anchors don't understand. The reason why you are seeing riots like these is because everyone has kind of resigned themselves to the reality that nothing is going to change and that there will be no justice. If all they accomplish is they got to burn down the police building.
When a whole section of this country feels like no matter what they do, they aren't being heard, they're gonna get heard now,
Mm-hmm.
And it seems
really
that's the only way. That the only way that the media will broadcast it. And even then, they focus on not what the message is, but the pictures of blood and fire and buildings. And of course, they give deference to people who want to have their own talking point of, well, the small business owners, it's their buildings that are being, burned down. What about them?
Mm-hmm.
And like, remember, for years, Black people in this country tried to do peaceful protesting in which they got down on one knee, as a sign of, hey, we want this to be addressed within this country. And the president called them sons of bitches. And the main thrust of the conversation went from, police brutality against black people to, is this offensive towards the troops? Like, that became...
to the American
This is an
flag.
example. This is an example of how the alt-right and their corporate allies in the media hijack a movement and a message. Colin Kaepernick, as we all know him, infamous for standing on a knee for the national anthem. This was to protest, as his right as an American as it is, to peacefully protest, the gunning down of young black men at the hands of police brutality in America. And what was the reaction by conservatives and their allies in the corporate media? They took that, said, I don't care, but what you're doing disrespects my flag. Fuck you. And they turned it into a whole issue about how dare you take a knee at the national anthem. They completely hijacked an issue, and by hijacking it, they completely left Black Lives Matter in the dust. And that was a win for the political right.
Mm-hmm. But then now those same people are crying about peaceful protests and how dare they do this and that and set this on fire. They should be protesting peacefully. Yet when they attempted to protest peacefully and as respectfully as humanly possible, you spit in their face.
Called them sons of bitches.
Yeah. And it's like, what did you expect?
Yeah.
What did you expect? So, I mean...
But I think
again,
it's important to say that it's important to reiterate, because people are going to harp on this because they want to say, like, what you guys are saying is you're happy that things are being burned down. You're happy that there's violence.
No.
People are going to because we're defending.
But that's not the point
exactly.
of this.
I'm harping on this because I know people are going to harp on this, because people are going to say, "Oh, well, you're glorifying violence and you're cheering on, the building
doing the opposite.
down."
I want less violence.
Exactly. I think no shit. Nobody wants to see buildings burned to the ground. No shit. It's a bad thing. But I'd rather
see buildings burning down than people being murdered.
But that's the point. Is why is it that you are choosing to care more about a couple of buildings than people being murdered? And yes, to be fair, innocent small business owners that are not involved in this are suffering the consequences, unfortunately. And what's happening to them? It fucking sucks. And I feel bad for those people. And you know what? You're right to an extent. What happened to them was not fair. But you are only propping up that issue because you don't want to give any kind of airtime to what you think would be the more important issue, and that is a race of people are being gunned down in America.
I guess my answer to this is whenever people try to talk, oh, but the looting, but the small businesses, all this, and it's like, yes, I agree. I hate that this is happening. So then maybe we should address these injustices so that it doesn't happen again. Because riots don't just happen. They're an explosion due to injustices within this country. If you don't want the riots, then address the injustices. And by the way, again, I like to say this when I criticize movies and stuff like this, so I'm going to bring it in here. I like to come with solutions, or just proposed solutions to address what's going on. I got this from several people have been showing this on the tweeters, and talking about, just the different policies you could put forth to address, police brutality in this country. Body cams, obviously. Body cams actually statistically don't lessen.
How about we make some
brutality?
How about we make some body cams that can't be turned on and off by the police officer, as we've seen happen?
And then and then you notice, like all the cops are doing it. They're covering their badge numbers.
Mm-hmm.
One was even using an umbrella in case some overhead helicopter caught his face or something. I think I don't want to like harp on your time here, Peter, about the solutions, but over the weekend we've seen video of police officers being overtly brutal to the point of parody. We have little girls being maced. We have pictures of people being dragged out of their car, being tased, and being shot at with rubber bullets because they were passed out at curfew.
A black woman was shot in the stomach with a black pregnant woman was shot in the stomach with a rubber bullet
and killed, right?
Miscarried. Oh God, did she die?
I think she died. And then we also seen photos of other black women who were shot in the head with rubber bullets. Reporters
getting arrested.
Shot at. We have
shot at.
Yeah, shot at. There was the black Latino reporter on CNN who was literally arrested on live television. Then we have some other reporters who were shot at with rubber bullets on live television. Even reporters who were putting their hands up, waving their press badges, and they were getting maced for it and while being arrested. We've seen pictures. And this is not police. I'm not sure if this is the place for it, but we've seen some crazy people. There was a story of this guy with a semi-truck driving into a crowd hoping to kill some protesters. And then the
guy came out with a bow and arrow.
What the sword?
With a sword.
And you know what? And I'm really glad you brought this up because oh God, who said it?
All Lives Matter.
Someone had said on Twitter. I can't remember who said it, but it's true. Like the more I thought about it, those people show just the fact that all three of those people are still alive show the massive amount of restraint. They interviewed
the guy with the bow and arrow.
But that shows the massive...
This guy showed up to a peaceful protest with a bow and arrow and just started up shooting people. That's what he did, to be clear.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think that was implied. But it shows the massive amount of restraint on the side of the protesters that those people are still alive. Because a dude ran at them with a sword and, they stopped him. They beat him up a little, but they didn't. He's alive. He's fine. Like he's walking around. The guy with the guy took out a bow and arrow and started shooting people, and the protesters stopped him. He walked away with a black eye, but he walked away, So whenever people try and talk about like, oh, these evil, violent, protesters, if they were really violent, you think these people would have walked away the way that they did? Like, ridiculous.
Also, like,
there was this video that I saw of, it was a black woman and a white woman. The white woman was sitting in front of her. They were on the floor. They were just like sitting down, and there was just like a line of cops in front of them. One of the cops came up to the white woman, tapped her, and scooted her over and arrested the black woman.
What?
Like,
we have footage of occupying police military shooting people while being on the porch of their homes with, I don't know if it was paint guns or rubber bullets or whatever it was. The excessive force is beyond disgusting. And by the way, in regards to that semi-driver, they're literally driving into plows of people. They're driving through crowds of people, like without any kind of impunity.
And, and again, just to reiterate, for all the cop cars set on fire or the building's windows smashed in, these people aren't, like, they're not physically attacking any individuals. Like, the idea that these are like, oh, these violent people, like, it's not happening. I saw a crazy one just before I hopped on here. I don't know the entire situation, but it was like shop owners. They were black shop owners were trying to protect, their shop, and I think it was like these white people that were trying to come in and like vandalize it. And I think they like took the black shop owner, like I don't know if he had like a shotgun or something, just trying to get them to go away. Cops pull up and immediately run on the black shop owner and try to arrest them. And like the newscaster is like yelling like, no, not him. Like he was trying to defend, and it's like, oh my God. Like,
people showing up with guns and like the protesters are like, you need to put that away. And
so many of the time protesters are de-escalating or attempting to de-escalate. I don't know. Oh, can I talk a little bit about solutions? Body cam. Yeah. So statistically, I don't believe it lowers police violence incidents, but at the very least, you have that footage, and you're capable of bringing justice and again highlighting injustices. If there wasn't anyone there with a phone to record what happened to George Floyd, no one would know, right? So yeah, body cams are important. Demilitarizing the police force. It's crazy.
That should be a no-brainer.
Regular everyday police have tanks. Like you see them walking the streets and it's like, where do you think you are? Like it's crazy that everyday police, and then again, statistically it's shown that the more militarized police are, the more likely they are to use their new toys, so to speak, and become violent. Again, no brainer. And for-profit policing, union contracts with police. This is a big thing. Like the union contracts for which police hold, that allows them a lot of power and a lot of it gives them power. I don't know how else to put it. In a very scary way. Some people are calling for the end to police unions, to outlaw police unions, saying that they, don't let the military have unions if they want. Police shouldn't have unions because it just allows them too much power. I don't know if I would go that far, but definitely better police union contracts, I think, are important. And again, this is a list I got from the internet of much more smarter people putting this together, and I was just reading through the data and looking what the different points they had said. Community oversight, obviously. I think it's very important that the police, no out-of-town police, the police that police your community should be from your community. I think that goes a long way in protecting said community and keeping police from overstepping a line. Obviously, limit use of force, and retraining. I understand in the United States that we're pretty gun crazy in comparison to other countries, so police maybe feel the need to be a little bit more strapped. But other countries, like cops just rolling up with guns out is like weird to them. Mm-hmm. Like in other countries, most police forces, like they have their baton and like that's mostly it. So yeah. That's most of it.
Another thing I think is just like it should be really hard to become a cop.
Yes. No, that's another one. I 100% agree. I think they should higher the standards for being a police officer in a big way. Maybe you can roll that into the whole training
I just think
aspect. Clearly
something has to change with oversight in terms of who it is they allow to be on the force, because, from my perspective, something is fundamentally broken with this entire process of hiring police officers. A lot of the things that we just listed as examples happened not just in one location, they happened everywhere in America. And how is it then that every police officer, or not every, but a lot of police officers are prone to violence. And what explanations do you have for targeting black people instead of white people?
Again, systemic, I think, built into the system. So this is another thing I would say, and this is me talking, and private prisons.
Oh yes, clearly, yeah. That's a
private
no-brainer.
Prisons are used as like a modern day slave labor. There's a lot of companies that build and make shit using prisoners, basically, where they can pay them like 25 cents. They can pay them basically nothing. And of course, what fuels that is having prisoners to make all that. It's basically modern day slavery.
Yeah.
There's a reason why we by far have like the highest incarceration rate in the world. Like it's ridiculous. And then, yeah.
It's just that we're at a moment right now in our country where it really has exploded. And it is fueled by a lot of the inequalities and the disparities and the failures of our institutions and organizations to do any good. And I want to get to the part now where I want to read this long quote by Dr. Cornel West. And I want to read that now because I feel that it's going to say everything, and then it's going to give us some other things to say that need to be said. To me, I found this to be a moment of clarity, and it's important, in my view, to read this. And here it is, Dr. Cornel West saying on his recent appearance on Anderson Cooper. Here is, as he says, quote unquote, "And now our culture is so market-driven, everybody for sale, everything for sale, you can't deliver the kind of really real nourishment for soul, for meaning, for purpose. So when you get this perfect storm of all these multiple failures at these different levels of the American empire, and Martin King really told us about that, the system cannot reform itself. We've tried black faces in high places. Too often our black politicians, professional class, middle class, become too accommodated to the capitalist economy, too accommodated to a militarized nation state, too accommodated to the market-driven culture of celebrities, status, power, fame, all that superficial stuff that means so much to so many fellow citizens. And what happens is we have a neo-fascist gangster in the White House who doesn't care for the most part. You've got a neoliberal wing of the Democratic Party that is now in the driver's seat with the collapse of Brother Bernie, and they really don't know what to do because all they want to do is show more black faces. But oftentimes those black faces are losing legitimacy too because the Black Lives Matter movement emerged under a black president, a black attorney general, and a black Homeland Security, and they couldn't deliver. So when you talk about the masses of black people, the precious poor and working class black people, brown, red, yellow, whatever color, they're the ones left out, and they feel so thoroughly powerless, helpless, hopeless. Then you get rebellion. We've reached a point now, a choice between nonviolent revolution, and by revolution what I mean is the democratic sharing of power, resources, wealth, and respect. If we don't get that kind of sharing, you're going to get more violent explosions. Now, the sad thing is, in the neo-fascist movement in the White House, you have some neo-fascist brothers and sisters out there who are already armed. They show up at the U.S. Capitol and they don't get arrested. They don't get put down. The president praises them. See what I mean? White supremacy is going to be around for a long, long, long time. Don't be surprised when this happens again. Try again, fail better. That's the blues line of our Irish brothers. But the question is, we must fight. Even in the moment where we have a failed social experiment, we must fight. We must have an anti-fascist coalition against the White House Republican Party. We have to tell the truth. about the milquetoast cowardly activity we see too often in the neoliberal wing of the Democratic Party. Unquote.
He's amazing. He's just such an incredible speaker, and he touches on something that I think is very. I feel a lot of people that they care and they want to do the right thing, like any of us would, but just where I feel they kind of miss it is where they're like, hey, vote in November, make sure to vote like this. And I agree, you should vote. Everyone should vote. And if I don't make it clear, whoever is the Republican, vote for the opposite of that.
Every time.
Every time. You absolutely should vote. But this idea of like just voting will make it better. Like he said, like these issues have existed and perpetuated under Democratic leaders. Barack Obama, again, not in love with him, but best president of my lifetime. It started under him, and if Joe Biden wins, it will continue under him. Simply voting for the not fascists isn't a fix, unfortunately. We have to do better than that, expect better than that, and push for more than just that. Like there's a lot of Democratic politicians. Again, I have pretty, I would consider high standards for the kind of politicians I like, but I mean, I'm not stupid. I will work with these politicians every day. if it means, if the opposite is Republicans and whatever the fuck they're doing. But a lot of them, they make statements and it just feels, the statements are just so like, we need to come together and share love and change this and change that. And like almost none of them are directly addressing, the police officers and all this. And it's like, this is what we're trying to fix. And it's a lot of platitudes and flowery language. And don't get me wrong, these people are 100% better than Trump. Okay. Like 100% better, 1,000,000,000% better. But we should also expect better than 1,000,000,000% better than Trump. We should push for more and expect more and understand that you can't just, change doesn't just happen at the ballot box. For any political achievement made throughout, United States history, it was, the only reason it got there was because there was a massive movement behind it that pushed and pushed and pushed till it was politically viable for those politicians to make that choice and to do push whatever legislation they had to do. Organizing, not protesting, all of this is severely important. Yeah.
And I would also add in that, regard, I agree with every word of what Dr. West just said. Unfortunately, that's just what our life has come to, what reality has come to. And to address specifically head on with, voting solves everything, and if you just vote for the Democrat, it's going to be okay. I have voted for Democrats for as long as I was able to vote, and I have supported Democrats for the entirety of my political ideology, because the opposite is just unthinkable in my case for what my politics are. But it's really hard to tell people to vote for someone who has been accused of sexual assault. It's really hard to make the case for a candidate that says nothing will fundamentally change to a bunch of banker donors. It's just, it's no excuse at all that the Democratic Party has been producing some of the most depressing and embarrassing candidates in recent memory. And that's with Trump being their competition. It is a sad statement that for 2 elections in a row, what the Democratic Party has produced have been milquetoast, as Dr. West says, neoliberal corporate candidates like Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, who are what you say, Peter, just use flowery language, platitudes, and don't stand for any kind of fundamental change. Their platform is, I'm not Trump. I'm better than Trump. Vote for me. And that's true. They are. And in cases like these, that could be enough for a lot of people. But it shouldn't be. We should expect more. We should expect better from people who want to lead our nation. And it also makes me incredibly angry at people like Barack Obama who want to say that there are better ways, like getting organized and voting if you want change. And why that made me angry is because we know. And you know what? You think you're laughing because you know that what I'm about to say.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
But it shouldn't take away from the seriousness of this, because it is fundamentally true. It's rich coming from that man telling us that if you want change, vote for it. Well, Obama, as was the reporting for several months before it actually happened, orchestrated a made-for-television coup against Bernie Sanders and his movement. He arranged for Amy Klobuchar and Pete Buttigieg to drop out. He arranged for Beto O'Rourke to endorse Joe Biden, days before Super Tuesday. And he said, the people close to him said to the newspapers, if it looks like Bernie is winning, he would step up and he would do something to stop that. And what happened before Super Tuesday? Let me remind you. Bernie Sanders won Iowa. He won New Hampshire. And he overwhelmingly won Nevada. And he did so in large part because people of color, for the first time, came out and voted and supported him, no matter how much the media wants to deny that. People of color in regards
mostly
to...
Latinos.
Yeah, Latinos, which they count as people of color. Although the media doesn't want to acknowledge that for whatever reason, they downplayed the role of Hispanics in that election and the success of Sanders overwhelmingly. They completely just downplayed that role. Sanders owes a lot to Hispanic voters for getting him as far as he got, especially here in California and in places like Nevada. But the point is, it looked as if he was going to win because virtually every candidate that wins those states, especially in a row, which has never been done before, might I add, wins and becomes the nominee. But what happened? It was a 3-day media circus of Biden winning a state he was always going to win. Obama pushing the right buttons to get the politicians to come out and support Biden. And the media, of course, waving that like a fucking parade.
Yeah.
And then what happens on Super Tuesday? Bernie is crushed in almost all of the southern states. States that he probably would have won had those other people had stayed in.
You definitely get closer. I mean,
he probably would have won a lot of those states if all those people had stayed in. And the point is this, and you and I feel the same way about this, Peter, is we watched in real time the apparatus and the infrastructure of the Democratic Party tell us that we don't care about your votes. We don't care what you think. We don't care if you want Bernie to be the nominee. What we say ultimately matters, the party apparatus. And we've decided it's Biden. And we'll do whatever it takes to make that happen.
Yeah.
And so what happened? Biden ended up winning. And that's not to excuse the faults of the Sanders campaign. That is not to make, excuse upon excuse for what happened. But I will not be convinced otherwise that isn't the case. And that the people who are telling us right now to mobilize for change are the very people who blocked that change movement from happening To which I say they can go fuck themselves.
Again, I don't think just to make it very clear, I think there's a clear distinction between Black Lives Matter and that movement, and of course, the Bernie Sanders quote unquote revolution.
Absolutely, I agree with you.
Yeah.
But it contributes to the sense of hopelessness in America.
Where I agree is this idea of like sort of political leaders, within the Democrat Party that want our vote and say like, hey guys, you come out and vote because this is important. But then also understanding that, or at least, understanding that they won't push nearly as hard as you want for the things that are most important. And when looking specifically at the issues of Black Lives Matter, it's like, why aren't the Democratic, anyone in the Democratic leadership literally going like, hey, we need to pass legislation, or even if, it won't get passed under a Trump presidency, maybe Biden's done this, I don't know. But Biden come out and speak and say like, this is important. This here, like a lot of the things we talked about, like I'm going to demilitarize the police. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And it may already, a lot of the stuff may already be, because the campaign has a list of like, this is what we believe. But for him to come out right now in this time of need where everyone in the country just feels like we're leaderless, and just come out and just go like, I can be that leader for you. I understand your pain, and I may have personally fucked up in the past, but let me, in this particular situation, but let me right that wrong. Here, and here is what I'm going to do to fix this situation. I'm going to push hard. The first 100 days bullshit that every politician says, within my first 100 days, boom, 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 boom. And again, a lot of this stuff might already be part of his platform. And I think he did go out in, for a little bit at one of the demonstrations. I think I saw some pictures.
It doesn't help that he can't speak, but
he has a tendency to put both feet in his mouth. But if he just that sort of leadership of like, you're hurting as the Democratic Party, this is how we'll fix it. This is the legislation we're going to push. And I feel like there's a serious lack of that. And a lot of times, again, that can feel just sort of like almost patronizing. Like, we'll pat you on the head and we'll say like, hey, we understand, we stand in solidarity, blah, 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 blah. Remember to vote in November, and scene, And again, I fully acknowledge, guess what? Guess who I'm voting for in November? I'm voting for Joe Biden, and I'm voting for every other Democrat that exists, because yes, I refuse to allow this country to fall into fascism, in the evils that is Donald Trump and his crazy fucking supporters. I refuse. But just because we refuse Donald Trump doesn't mean we still shouldn't push like crazy to expect better of the individuals we have. And I think if we had politicians that in the Democratic Party that pushed in the way that we at the bare minimum expect them to, we wouldn't have this feeling of hopelessness. Even if they couldn't accomplish as much as you'd hope, we wouldn't have this feeling of hopelessness where we can't change anything.
To all of that. Like, to me, everything is all connected. This is about the Black Lives Matter movement, but it's not just about that. It's about every injustice and infuriating thing that exists in this, disparate nation. And, it shouldn't be, to me, a controversial thing to say. at all that the neoliberal corporate wing of the Democratic Party is a failed state. I don't believe in them. In fact, part of me hates them completely. And, the reason why I brought up the whole Bernie thing is because, look, he was my guy. But at the same time, I thought it was really special that, people in my community, Hispanics and Latinos, really liked him. And the media never acknowledged that. And it made our community feel like our vote didn't matter. Not just that, but the Democratic operatives themselves made it seem as if our vote didn't matter. And that hurts me. Really, really bad. And it's not something that I'm going to forgive. Even, let's say, if I do bring myself to vote for Joe Biden. I don't know if I am. But
you live in California, so.
Yeah. But that's why. If I lived in a battleground state, it'd be no question. But since my vote doesn't matter, because guess what? I live in California. It's a personal thing. I'd like to vote for Joe Biden. I don't know if I am. But, and that would be because I've just got nowhere to go. The neo-fascist Republican Party, the neoliberal Democratic Party, they're both failed states that have failed America for far too long. And I am sick of it. And that's not to suggest that people should, just walk away from the election. No, of course not. I want people to vote. I want people to stand up and vote their voice and to stand up for democracy. My, pragmatic feelings, pessimistic feelings, mind you, notwithstanding, I'm not trying to sway anybody from voting. I want people. I've always wanted more people to vote. And yes, I would encourage you to vote for Joe Biden because every election, it seems like, for the end of time, will be the lesser of two evils. Okay, accept it. Move on. It is what it is. And you know what? We've got a candidate who is nowhere near the evil that the current president is. And it is no question who you should be voting for. And believe me, I do not want this to be twisted. I am not trying to dissuade anybody from voting for Joe Biden. I am just trying to voice my concerns.
I would say, two things. I think the perfect juxtaposition between Biden and Trump is the last big scandal with Biden was him putting his foot in his mouth and saying something along the lines of, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black, or something like that. And then the last thing Trump saying is, once the looting starts, the shooting starts. And I think that really perfectly sums up the two choices that America has.
It ain't great, but you got one clear better than the other.
Yeah. But I will say, my point in voicing my dissatisfaction with the Democratic Party isn't to say don't vote for them. Absolutely vote for them, because again, the lesser of two evils is still less evil. And my hope is to bring less evil into this world. But it's mainly to stress that politics should not begin and end at the ballot box.
Exactly.
It should just be one mode, one form of expressing your political wants and needs. And I feel like most people they feel like and a lot of people I would say felt that way with Bernie. It's like, well, if we just get Bernie in, everything will be fixed.
Oh no, that was.
And then a lot of people felt this with Obama. Well, if we just get Obama in, everything will get fixed. And it's not that simple. It will never be that simple. You will need to engage in political spaces outside of the ballot box to affect the change that is necessary. And again, one of them is happening right now. The thing we've been talking about this whole time. But also, focusing heavily on down ballot. That's still within, the ballot box. But it's vitally important not to just hyper focus on the president as well. It's organization. It's if you are capable of helping financially, people, organization, protesters. There's just so much. So my brain's just
it's an endless conversation to have. Just one quick thing is that I realize I probably said some things that some people are not going to really see. Go watch Bernie Blackout on Vice News. That's a documentary. Watch that and then get back to me. If you don't agree with my view that the election was taken away from him by the apparatus of the Democratic Party, which is fact, by the way. But to also address other aspects of Dr. West's brilliant words there. The fact that it needs to be said, but that the media doesn't say. We literally covered this on this show weeks ago, where you had a lot of conservative, Republican, Trump, white people go and protest with armed militias and everything. They don't get attacked. They don't get shot with rubber bullets. They don't get, thrown tear gas at them. And arguably, what they were doing, whether or not you agree with it was their right, it was a stupid and reckless thing to do because, and it should be fair, being fair though to the crowds that are happening right now all across the country, not to, show favoritism here, but what they're doing is the same thing. In that is large gatherings of any kind is going to only perpetuate the spread of coronavirus. It's that simple. That's just how the virus works. Not to both sides of the situation, but that's just a fact about how COVID-19 works. Whereas those people back in early May and late April, they didn't care who got sick or not. They knew, or they thought it was a lie, but they were protesting not being able to get haircuts. And they were, in some cases, violent toward the officers around them. They never shot them. They never attacked them. Is it because they were white? Is it because they were on the president's side? Then all of a sudden, it doesn't take that long for, young black man to get killed. Riots happen. And of course, oh yeah, all the pageantry comes out. The helmets, the batons, the bullets, the tear gas. It just comes out just like that. I think Dr. West put it right when he said that America is a failed social experiment. It's a moment to me that has felt, every moment this year has felt like something I'll never forget. But I remember being in elementary school and they would put on animations or something like that to tell us that racism is a thing, that it always has been a thing. Discrimination, prejudice of that kind. And I've always was just so confused by that, even as a little kid, thinking, why would people be against other people because of the color of their skin? Why would we hate ourselves? It doesn't make any sense. I think we all experience that at some point in, public education. And it is a painful moment. And it feels right now most to the kind of brutality we saw in the 1960s. Those famous riots that we know of where I believe it was in Alabama or some southern state where the police were, sending dogs, using fire hose, water hoses to, attack people.
These police officers are much better. They only shoot you with rubber bullets and gas you.
Yeah.
So...
But it is reminiscent of that and the moment that, it means for America. And of course, the hope is always there that things will get better. But it's important to remember that the reason why this agitation is happening right now is because ultimately most people are under the impression that it's not going to change. Not anytime soon. The best we can hope for is that Trump gets voted out of office.
Well, it's like Cornel West said at the end. You know, you try, you fail, but fail better.
Yeah.
That's the hope, that you get better with each failure. And in a more positive note, to the credit of us in this country, there are obviously aspects where we have gotten better over time.
Of course.
Like, obviously. Not everything is doom and gloom. But there's still very much real issues that, due to the influence of Trump, feel almost like a step backward, so to speak. So,
Alexis, anything to add on what this is?
I was gonna read 2 tweets, but they kind of are really sad, so I won't.
oh no.
I think really what it's all focused down to is, and for addressing people who are, let's say, of a conservative persuasion, or who are, a lot of people I'm seeing just share a lot of like posts about I stand with the police or the boys in blue, or like, have you no sense of decency? Have you no compassion? Is it really impossible for you to act or care about people who don't think like you? Perhaps if we didn't focus on our differences and focused on what, our similarities are, we wouldn't be in this situation. But that's the story of time. And it always breaks my heart that, it's not hard to be kind. It's not hard to be nice or to care about others. It shouldn't be anyway. But for me, my apprehension toward people who, let's say, support Trump or are conservatives in general is a complete lack of empathy, a complete disinterest in having any kind of compassion. And I find it sickening. And if you care more about vandalism and buildings burning down more than your fellow human beings being gunned down, if you care more about burning buildings or you care more about the right to own a gun than the fact that hundreds of people are being gunned down by white domestic terrorism, by the way. If you don't care more about people's lives than objects, there is something fundamentally wrong with you. So, yeah, it's been a few days.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and by the way, COVID-19 is still out there, so that's that's the thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not an anxiety person, but I mean, pretty crazy out there.
And it's interesting, because and this will nicely segue into the world of film again. Because we talked about, and the news apparently has proven Alexis right. Her money wasn't, her eye was in the ball, or like whatever. Her eye wasn't. I don't know what the expression was. She was right. She was right when she said that July is probably when most movie theaters are going to open, and it's interesting, just to cap off on this last discussion is. And I think I had this discussion with my family right before we went on, on this podcast. What are things going to look like in a month from now with COVID-19 and with all of these protests doing nothing but strengthen the virus as far as people who catch it and people who die from it? By the way, nothing to say, of course, of the previous anti-lockdown protests or the fact that reopening was already happening in America all over the place. But now, with these riots...
Yeah, you can't ignore the fact that it's probably going to cause spikes. Again, like that's what's so difficult. The world is very gray in a lot of ways, where it's like you have to weigh the options of, there's a pandemic going on, but now is the time, to really send a message about these injustices going on within this country. And you just have to weigh them. I personally think I'm on the side of, the protesting, but yeah, it will probably lead to some spikes in COVID, which again already predominantly hurts Black people in this country.
They just can't catch a break, can they, in America?
No. Luckily, I see a lot of protesters usually wearing
they wear masks, and that's good.
Yeah.
Take every precaution, but it does so much. It only does so
With
much
so
when you're in
many
large
people.
gatherings. It almost makes it moot in some circumstances. But in regards to the theaters themselves, Peter and I were under the and I think still to a point. We'll see how things are in a month, clearly, but we're still under the impression that we're a long way from movies opening, and even if they do, we're not going to go back to them anytime soon. That's for sure. But as far as July, we had talked about last week about Christopher Nolan's Tenet film insisting on opening mid-July. Well, since then, Regal's, I think the owner of Regal has said that they're going to open up their theaters in July in time for Tenet. There have also been like rumors that AMC is going to do the same thing. And
good luck.
These decisions... These decisions were seemingly made before, of course, the riots and the protests that were happening. And again, removing that, the three of us were already making the case that reopening was already exacerbating COVID enough, and that in a month it's going to be so much worse. Well, now adding this to the fire, the question goes to both of you. Knowing what we know with the reopening and the protests leading to massive spikes in COVID, do you think theaters are still going to open in July? And if they do, how long do you think they'll stay open? And if they do, I'm asking like 2 or 3 questions. Whoever wants to go. Alexis, go first.
I think that they're still gonna open, but it's kind of more iffy now because of just like with everything going on. But I think more so than not, they are gonna open.
How long do you think they'll stay open? Let's say things get really bad in July. Do you think they'll just stay open and never close again?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Peter?
I don't see them opening.
That's the plan right now, but this is the first day of June. We're talking about mid-July. A lot can happen in a month and a half.
And yeah, like, especially with all the people protesting right now, that's about the time when it would start popping up if they got contracted it. I don't see it. Yeah, I'm saying bullshit. I'm gonna call in it.
How? Like I kind of agree with both of you. It's weird because like I feel like they're just gonna try and open no matter what to see what happens. But let's say they do. Who's gonna go? I keep saying this. Like, let's just focus on that aspect right now. I was having this conversation with Peter. Okay. Let's just remove the risk you're putting on your life and those around you to the side. How is that going to be enjoyable for you? When part of the allure of movie going is the escapist sensibility to leave the world around you behind. How is that going to be the same when everywhere you look you're reminded of COVID? First of all, half of the seats will be removed. And then of that half, they're only going to have so many people in that theater. Let's say you're watching the movie. What happens if you hear somebody cough in the middle of the movie? Like, where does your mind go to? The fact that somebody coughed, and then you're in a room that is filled with recycled air. Or the food that you eat. Are you going to trust that food? Like where it's been touched or who's touched it? What if, and as we've seen with, eateries like Johnny's in our local community, what happens if somebody catches COVID and they touch your food and they give it to you? Like, there are so many things I feel that can go wrong, and yet it doesn't seem that people care. I don't think they're thinking this through about what it's going to be like and how different it's going to be to experience this, to the point where I think I wouldn't want to go because I care about my life first and foremost. But even then, you're paying the same prices for half of the experience. The same way I can't believe people just want to go to Disney and spend all that money for half of the things that you would normally get. It just doesn't make any kind of fiscal sense. It doesn't. I understand, of course, the theme parks and, of course, the movie theaters wanting to reopen to see what happens and see if so they can start making money. But it's not going to be the destination that it once was because of the situation that we're in. And is that sustainable? Particularly for the movie theaters? It's a conundrum. And I can see it going the way that you say it, Alexis, and the way that Peter says it. Personally, I can't see it happening. I can't see them opening in mass when you have this many people not only getting sick, but dying.
I think what's going to happen is, people went out to protest. This is why this happened. Let's just open it. It's their fault. Like, they wanted to be out there. It's their fault. Their own fault that they got sick. Like, that's what's going to happen. It's not a matter of people's safety. Nobody has cared about people's safety this entire time. We were closed for a month and a half, maybe less. It's gonna open. Whether it's the right thing or the wrong thing, we know that it's the wrong thing to do, but it's gonna happen.
I think the only way they open, though, is if people show up. And it's financially
Is that a guarantee?
worth
How is
it.
that a guarantee right now with all of the different externalities?
Yeah.
1, people are not going to want to risk themselves. 2, hell no. 3, money. You think the theaters are suffering? People are suffering right now. We're in the midst of the beginning of a new depression. Hello?
And then also, like, the only thing, well, not the only thing, but the main thing that would get people back to the theaters is if you had a shiny new movie to show. And I feel like they're only, something like Tenet, they're only going to end up showing it in movie theaters if there are a lot of open movie theaters. But if there aren't, there's only a few, then they're not going to release it, in which case you have nothing really to show people, in which case they have no reason to risk their life to go to the movie theaters, even if you're playing old movies. Like, they're like, fuck that. Like, why would I risk my life? I'll just rent it at home. So
and by the way, we should mention that public polling consistently does say that a majority of Americans don't want everything to reopen right now.
What could reopen, though? I feel like movie theaters should be one of the last things to reopen.
Theme parks and movie theaters should be one of the last things to reopen.
Should be the very last thing.
If concerts can't happen until 2021, perhaps we should consider the fact that movies and theme parks can't come back until 2021.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but I really think that's the case. Like, ultimately, yeah.
But they're going to try, though. They already announced, I think, you correct me if I'm wrong, Alexis, but didn't they already announce an opening date for Disney World and Disneyland?
Disney World.
Not Disneyland yet?
Not Disneyland.
Okay. Disney World would
Those
be in
will
July.
Be some interesting vlogs. Hey guys, we're back here at Disneyland.
And it's like, I mean, that to me is like super weird because like I was talking about it with my cousin because she was supposed to get married this year and she was gonna go to Disney World for her honeymoon, and like she's still planning on it. She still hopes to get married towards the end of the year and still go and stuff. And I was kind of just like reading what was gonna happen, and right now the only people that are gonna go are basically the ones who had already planned to go before COVID. Like, they're not going to be selling any new tickets at all. And then you have to make a reservation to go in. There's no fast pass. Dining is, like, limited. Like,
there's no live entertainment, no parades, no fireworks. That the operating hours are even going to be cut back. And just in case Alexis didn't already mention this, like, if you're going to Disney World, like, all dining plans or reservations to restaurants were canceled. You can't make that. Yeah. And even if you do have reservations to stay at the resorts, the hotels, that doesn't guarantee you access to the parks.
So it's like, and I was like telling her, like, she's so excited, you know, because it's like she's gonna go for the first time, whatever. But she was just like, I hope I get to do like the things that I want. And I'm like, you're probably not going to. You might get on the rides, but, like, I don't know. I can't tell you.
It's so weird to me. I don't know. It's like if someone gave you, like, hey, here's an awesome new car. You can only drive it between the hours of 10 p.m. and 10:30 p.m. You can only drive in reverse. And you cannot breathe inside the car. You have to roll down the window and stick your head out. Like, shiny, awesome new car, but, like, at that point, why?
What's the point?
Yeah. What's the point? Know. That's how it feels. It's like, yeah, Disneyland and all that shit is fun and all, but, like, if it's gonna be, and I guess, I know some people are different, but I know me, I would be paranoid the entire time.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't have fun. I wouldn't enjoy anything.
Again, part of the attraction of Disney is the escapist allure of it, and that won't be the case if you're reminded, because everybody's wearing a fucking mask. And by the way, that in and of itself is going to be a PR nightmare for the cast members, having to deal with, like, idiotic people fighting them about wearing masks. That's going to happen.
I feel so bad for the cast members. I feel so bad because, you know, I admit it. I know that Disney people are very entitled people, but damn.
The cult of Disney. And you're a high priestess.
Yeah. And I feel bad for them. Like, it's gonna suck.
The kind of abuse they're gonna get, they don't deserve, of course, but that's just how it's gonna be, because I know I've seen a lot of comments on Disney Parks blog about the kind of changes that are gonna happen, and they're the worst. like they literally thought that they were gonna open back up and nothing would have changed.
Somebody, a whole family went and made hot dogs in Disney Springs, which is like Disney World's version of downtown Disney. They grilled hot dogs in the middle of the place.
And it's like, I guess these people think they're immortal. I don't know. It's so.
And it was like a family of like 4 kids, and none of them were like wearing masks or anything. And I get it, they were eating, but it's like, I don't know, like
why?
I don't know.
Like, what? And it's like, oh god. And I've read some of those comments. Oh my god. Crazy. Like, I I can't believe this. Do you really? This is supposed to be a magical place? How am I supposed to feel the magic if I have to wear a mask? And it's like, lady or dude, like, you could die.
Or you could kill somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, this was like when COVID was like barely starting and like the lockdown was barely starting. There was this post of, I'm not sure if the husband posted it or if it was like the wife herself. I'm not sure. Or maybe the person who took the call. I don't know. But it was basically this lady who called guest services because her trip got canceled because, you know, we are in a pandemic.
We are. We should, we should clarify. We are in a pandemic.
That is something that is happening currently.
And she called guest services. The husband was like in the kitchen somewhere, but he was listening to the call. She demanded that the cast member rebook her trip, but give her the Cinderella suite.
I read that.
Oh, like she was fighting for it. And she's like, no, like we deserve it. My kids are so sad that we are not going and everything is canceled, blah, blah, blah. And I can't remember like the whole story, but in the end, the husband like went up to her and he was just like, I don't know who you are. Like, what are you doing?
I think in that story, like, they had said, like, or she had said, like, I at least expected, like, a free year of Disney Plus or something like that.
Oh my god.
But, like, I don't know if that story was real, but, like, I mean, I believe it. I kind of believe it. There are people that are that crazy entitled where it's like, holy shit. You, like, this didn't happen to you. It's the entire country. Yeah. Like, this isn't some like the personal slight towards you.
Like, yeah, that's what I don't get when people are like, no, it's like it's all fake, blah blah. But it's like, dude, no, it's not. Like, the whole world is going through this. Like, what does it like process in your head, or what? I don't know. It's fucking weird.
People are just crazy. They really are, and I don't know how to fix that. I don't know if it's fixable. Like, I think a lot of people are just kind of lost causes. That's one of the biggest things we need to fix in this country is our educational system. Because, yeah, I don't know. You talk to some people and it's just, or you hear the things they say or the stuff they put on social media, and it's like, how?
Yeah.
Like,
there was this,
it's not just like, I disagree. It's like, oh, this is a different reality.
Yeah. There was this video of this lady going up to these protesters, and they were like in the corner of like a street or something, and they set up like signs and everything, like make them look all nice. And she starts tearing them down, and everybody's like, no, like, we're trying to keep social distancing, blah, blah. And she's like, no, it's all fake. Like, she's yelling at them. She's like, no, it's all fake. Like, nobody's died, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, what? And it's so weird.
Do they think that, like, 100,000, like, do you know how hard it is to lie about 100,000 people dying? Like, you can't lie about that. Like, these people are real. They exist. You can look them up. They have names. They have family. Like, I don't know what to tell these people. And I saw something very similar. Another video, but this time with Black Lives Matter, where these people had, like, put up like a big old poster, I think, talking about that. Mm-hmm. And then again, crazy lady comes, tries to tear it down, real confrontational, and she's saying like, no, like, you're paid, you're Antifa, you're paid and they're like, what? No. But it's like just crazy.
What's this whole, I know I'm like stupid, but like, what's this whole Antifa thing?
Antifa stands for anti-fascism. The reason why people especially on the right, dislike them is because they are known to show like rallies, protests, and stuff like that, and like cause a ruckus, so to speak. They are known for that, but they're not like an official organization. They're like a decentralized organization. If you call yourself Antifa, then you are Antifa, basically. Like, it's not like a real group or an organization. I mean, I would consider myself Antifa. Well, there I go. Now I'm on a terrorist watch list. But simply because, yeah, I am anti-fascist. But like other organizations, like they have.
Oh, by the way, real quick,
Peter,
Peter, to address what you said earlier in the recording of this podcast, Joe Biden's campaign put out a statement that tomorrow, which would be Tuesday, June 2nd, by the time this is up, it'll be much later in the week, that he will give public remarks in Philadelphia on the civil unrest across the country. So what you just said on this recording is Biden's going to say some words about what's happening right now in the country.
Yeah. Will it be like in front of a crowd, or would it be?
I would hope not.
Online.
All I hear is Joe Biden's campaign announces that tomorrow he will deliver remarks in Philadelphia on the civil unrest facing
because it says in Philadelphia.
Country.
When you say in Philadelphia, it makes it seem like it'll be like in front of a podium.
I don't think it'll be like through a Zoom or something. It can be in person, I think.
My biggest hope is that, obviously, you know, grand speech, flowery language, and shit like that. My biggest hope is that he gives concrete solutions, and they're not just shitty concrete solution. Because like the last thing he said when he was talking about like we should retrain the police, and everyone was making fun of him, you know, if they're unarmed with a knife, instead of shooting them in the chest, shoot them in the leg. And I mean, to a certain level, I guess, yeah, just not, but it's just so like it feels like, okay, you haven't thought about solutions, have you? To any of this. I'm hopeful that he comes out strong and says like, hey, we need to demilitarize the police. This is a huge issue. Address, you know, police union contracts, or even just address the police at all. Because again, I just feel like there's a real lack of Dem leadership, like saying like, yeah, no, the police is the issue, you know, and this is how we need to fix it. I think they're starting to, but in the beginning it was very much not that way. Yeah. But yeah, okay, so that's good. See, I should be Joe Biden's campaign advisor.
Oh, I wish he was. I wish you were, because at least, you know, there'd be more to a strategy besides hiding in the basement this entire time. I mean, to a
he's
certain
lucky
extent,
it's working.
To a certain extent, it works. It works because you let Trump talk and it does all the work for you. Apparently,
both of them put their feet in their mouth, and so the one that's doing it the least is gonna win. But I mean, Joe Biden was always gonna win. I feel whoever the Democratic nominee was, and even like Trump has lost every bit of the high ground, so to speak. Terrible economy, entire country is burning.
The country is it's burning.
The pandemic was handled as terribly as humanly possible. His strength is from looking like he's in a position of power. No one thinks he's in any position of power right now. Like, if no one believes he's in control of anything. So yeah,
I think he's convinced himself that the only way he'll win is by just doing enough culture war shit to get his people out to vote.
But he's losing the culture war.
Yeah.
Do you see any of his MAGA people out there in the streets?
Why aren't they?
Well, I do, but like,
pussies.
Or they're the looters. I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah, that's true.
The only ones I've seen had a bow and arrow.
There was a video of like...
Yeah, the bow and arrow guy. Hey, he went out there. He's the only one.
Oh, they were out today, I think, and hunting.
Oh yeah, I did
whatever.
see that there were some people, and they were walking around with guns and shit.
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
But there was like 5 of them or something like that. But I remember, didn't he tweet like a couple nights ago, like MAGA night? Like
that was the funniest thing. So he didn't tweet. He like said it. I think it might have been a tweet, but he also said it like on live television. MAGA night at the White House, and then a whole bunch of protesters come. And
they were trying to make America great again. I'll give them that. So, I mean, technically, he's not wrong.
But everything he's done has been to antagonize these people. I mean, he literally threw tear gas at them for occupying the park in front of the White House today.
But I think at this point, it's blowing back in his face for the first time.
I hope you're right. I pray that you're right.
It seems that way. Yeah.
Yeah. What were we talking about?
We were talking
reopening?
about something else.
Okay. I think we're done with that. I still have a hard time seeing July happening. I really do. I think, Alexis, though, you are right. But I'm just conflicted because I just can't
Well,
see it
you
happening.
just don't want it to happen. And I don't want it to happen either. But...
Yeah. Well, Peter, before we move on, can you talk about what you've read about some analysts speculating that Mulan may, in fact, go to PVOD instead of theaters for Disney?
I mean, yeah, that's it. You covered it.
Oh, okay. All right.
I think it was an article. I didn't really read through it. I was pulling a boomer Facebooker, and I just read the headline, and it was basically something along the lines of, it seems as if they could not win. What am I saying? Win. They could, in the long run, financially, get more out of Mulan if they went the VOD route at this point. And then, of course, our guest host, Grace Randolph, also tweeted she tweeted that her sources are saying, hey, English is my third language, are saying that yes, that Mulan VOD is back on the table. I can see that, yeah.
If that's the case, it's still a major loss.
That's a pretty big loss.
Mulan with the inclusion of a Chinese cast, and especially with the Chinese box office. What a missed opportunity of colossal proportions.
Yeah.
You could have
I would say, if anything, just release Black Widow. Because I feel like the impact that Mulan is going to have is going to be Black Panther level. And it's like, and then especially right now,
well, let me be
clear
clear about that. It was my expectation that both. I know that the excitement isn't there for Black Widow, but the MCU is still very popular.
Yeah.
It was my expectation that Black Widow would get very close. Both Black Widow and Mulan would get very close to $1 billion, if not get over $1 billion. Because Captain Marvel made $1 billion. I mean, and it wasn't great. It was what it was. But like, I would think that the Black Widow movie would be of the same quality as Captain Marvel. So, and it's Black Widow. Now that was when it was going to come out in May. I don't know if and when November happens, how it would still have the same kind of excitement. A Marvel movie sells, but Mulan had an international appeal across the board, and it would be a damn shame to have that go on PVOD.
Yeah, especially with like, just the bad things that people have been saying about them with like COVID and stuff. I feel like
that's also it too, right? Yeah. We haven't even mentioned that as much, although we should have. Just the blatant racism against Asian Americans because of COVID-19 has been disgusting to see.
Yeah, really bad. It's
really, really bad.
Yeah.
So
And
that's interesting.
that was like another part of like just why this whole. I mean, it's not just this that like has affected me. It's just this whole year, but like it's just been complete
I feel that way too.
Shit. like it's been so bad, and like on like a personal level and just the world level. And that was like one of the first things that happened where I was like, wait, like this isn't right. Like I had a family member who was being racist because of this whole COVID thing, and I was just like, no. Like I went up to like my parents and stuff, and I was like, no, we're not speaking to this person ever again. I'm sorry.
And it also, even with all the racism put to the side, Mulan not coming out of theaters also robs Asian Americans of having another big Asian film at a big Asian blockbuster like Crazy Rich Asians at the box office. It's important to have movies like these in theaters so that as many people can experience them and it be as big of an event as possible.
Yeah.
That, and I also kind of had a feeling this would be the best live action Disney remake ever.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to see it.
Yeah.
And, it looked good.
So I don't know. I say just
It's
wait for Mulan. And Mulan is like such a big, like, everybody loves Mulan.
Yeah.
So it's like,
But again, Disney is being more cautious about that because I think what I've read is that they're looking at July or August. They're going to stick with July. They're going to see how Tenet does, if in fact it does go ahead with opening.
Mm-hmm.
Because Tenet is the first big movie that'll be open. And then, of course,
still a lot of big ifs.
Right. Wonder Woman is still waiting in August. So there's a lot of big ifs with that. And we're not convinced that they'll happen at all. So before we close, it's appropriate to have some kind of positive conversation. So let's go around the table here and talk about the things that we've seen as far as media is concerned this week. I've seen quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. I'll go first because I didn't. Maybe I forgot. Oh no! Actually, I have seen quite a bit. I guess I can say this for like because it's for future shows. I watched everything ever released for Tron because this upcoming month. Is Alexis okay?
Yeah, I'm here. Why?
You need to move more, man. Like there's so many times where you're just in an awkward position and you just like a statue. You just stop. And
I am listening to you.
Okay. It just because it makes me think your shit freezes because it freezes a lot too. So
yeah.
Okay. Anyways.
You're announcing To the Table is going to come back.
Yeah, To the Table. It's going to come back. We got a shit ton of other stuff we got to focus on. So we're pushing back the original set schedule some more. And it's going to be Tron month, basically. We're going to review the original film, Tron Legacy, and then the first season of Tron Uprising because there was only one season because it was canceled.
And in case people are not aware, because To the Table has been very inconsistent over the last few years. Again, no,
mm-hmm.
Not throwing shade any which way. We're all culpable here. It is available on our podcast network. If you can't see it, just search To the Table. Kyle Lira, I think his name is on it or whatever, and then it'll pop up. It should be where the rest of the podcasts are with Fantasy Fair and Bond and Beyond.
Yeah, so I obviously rewatched all of that, and then beyond that, I've just been watching a lot of The Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack. Because at this point, I don't know what to tell you guys.
Yeah.
It's been a long year.
We're halfway there.
I'll get you. I'll go next.
And remember, there's no reason to believe 2021 will be any better.
Thank you for that, Peter. That was really reassuring. That we really needed that right now. You know, like this is like the worst year ever. Like we really needed to hear that. It could always get worse. Sure. Okay. Great. Yeah. That's exactly what I wanted to hear right now. Good. So what have I seen this week? Doctor Who. I went back and watched the last 5 episodes. I actually just recorded a podcast, the weekly podcast with David. Now we'll be talking about mostly S.H.I.E.L.D., but we also talked about Doctor Who. It did that thing I didn't want it to do, and it was useless and pointless. And the comparison that I'll make is that as far as the fan base is concerned, it is a Last Jedi moment. And as far as the quality of what the big change was, it is very reminiscent of Rise of Skywalker. It's going to be a fascinating review whenever David watches it, because not that I hate it, but it is... Oh, boy. And I was having a good time. Like I watched 5 episodes, the last 5 episodes of season 12, and the 4 before it were... I mean, the 4 of those were great. Good to great. That last one was mostly Revelation, and the Revelation was... The best thing I can compare it to is Rey Palpatine.
Oh, wow.
So,
damn.
I mean, let me be clear. Maybe it's not as bad as that. It's just that that's the thing that I think it's the most similar with and what it does. So.
At the end, was she like they were like, "Who are you?" And she was like, "Doctor." And then they were like, "Doctor Who?" And then she was like, "Exactly."
that happened several times already, but
okay, but this time she looked at ghosts and then she said exactly.
Dr. Skywalker.
No.
Dr. Skywalker.
No. Overall, it was a much better season than last season, but it at what cost, I think, would be the appropriate question. I also catched the new S.H.I.E.L.D. episode. Again, we're going to go into in-depth in those shows, but David and I were very much pleased with it. It was also, I forgot, that episode David watched with a live audience at D23.
Yeah.
So he had already seen it months ago. And it completely went over my mind that he actually had experienced that. So, yeah, we talked about that at length.
I know everything that happened. He was just like reenacting the audience. He's like, and then like the end hit, and he's like, and then the people cheered, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah. So,
I mean,
that
has it ever happened where they show an episode at a con and then the people boo?
That's true. That's true. Although, no, let's not get there. And then what else did I see as far as, I think that was, as far as shows, that might have been it. I did see 2 other Spielberg films, again, on my rewatch. I rewatched E.T. And I know you do, and I hate you for it.
Little bastard.
Oh, he creeps me out.
Never fails to make me just... I'll talk about that more on another show, but it was beautiful. And then also I rewatched Bridge of... Are you okay?
Yeah.
You hit the mic really hard.
I know.
I rewatched Bridge of Spies, and it was infuriating because, you know, people suck and they always have. Because of the conflict that happens there. But it was interesting because after I watched the movie, I watched a Q&A. When the movie came out a few years ago, the Producers Guild of America YouTube channel, they have one. Can you believe it? And it was a Q&A, which didn't feel like the normal boring Q&As is you have like the cast there and like you get some host guy and they ask questions about the movie and it comes off as like awkward and like nobody really wants to be there. But this was so different because it was just Steven and they had the moderator be Martin Scorsese, which of course they're like lifelong friends.
Yeah.
And so it came off more like a conversation of like 2 like old friends going back and forth about not just the film, but like other experiences that they've had. And some interesting details that they revealed about that. First and foremost, and Peter, you might enjoy some of this. So part of the inspiration Steven got from making Bridge of Spies was during the Cold War. Steven's father was actually doing this foreign exchange program of like electrical workers with Russia. They had some Russians come to America, and they had some Americans go to Russia to learn about their profession and their field and everything. And Steven and his brothers and his mom were like, what's wrong with you? Like, why would you want to go there? Because of all of the propaganda and the Red Scare that was happening because of the Cold War. And Steven's father said, well, I mean, I feel like if we just did more talking, there'd be less shooting, there'd be less war, or something like that. So that's part of the inspiration for what Steven got to make Bridge of Spies, which is, how he says that it's a spy movie, but it's not. It's a word-heavy film, and how, conversation and communication can be used to avert, the proliferation of warfare very easily. And that was part of it. What was another part of interesting story? Marty was talking about, this is hilarious, Taxi Driver, and how the studio really, really hated that ending. Because it was gory at the time. It was like really, really like gory to have on cinemas. And Marty brought in Steven because Steven was more familiar with the studio people. And he asked for ideas for how it is that he can sell this to them, because he was ready to kill them, basically, Marty, and the studio people, because he was just so enraged that they would ask to change it. And Steven was like, what? And so I think what ended up happening is, while they were discussing, is they figured out that they were going to do a different color correction to the scene. And then that got the studio to like give it. They made it like
I know, I've heard of that story where they made it a slightly different color.
Yeah.
Or like slightly darker, or like something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the dumbest. God. Like, you hear shit like that all the time with studios, where it's like the way you're able to pull the fast one on them because they just want the dumbest corrections, or they're afraid of this or that. Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah. So it was honestly a really insightful conversation about a whole bunch of stuff, not just with the movie, but just it's something you don't really see as often. Like, it's an hour of like Martin Scorsese and Steven Spielberg talking with each other, and it felt so much like a podcast, not like a Q&A, where it's like you have people from the audience asking questions. It's not that whatsoever. So I'd recommend watching it just to hear them talk. It's amazing. Yeah, that was my week. Alexis?
Cora. I started watching that Zendaya show on
the
HBO.
Show?
Euphoria. But it got really depressing, and then
it sounds depressing as shit.
It was, depressing week, so I just stopped. It's a good. It was pretty good. I just,
by the way, that's why I can't
watch it.
That's why I can't watch things like BoJack Horseman all the time, or like Rick and Morty, because sometimes I cannot.
The last season of BoJack Horseman is incredible, but like the second to last episode, almost broke me. Like, it was.
And if that's how it made you feel, imagine what it would do to me.
So I stopped. I'll finish it later, but just right now is like not.
It ain't
the
time for dark shit.
Yeah.
That's just the reality.
So then we move on to Cora, which also didn't really help. But
by the way, real quick, they just sent helicopters to DC.
Of course,
to disperse the crowds. I'm sorry, I just wanted to say that real quick.
But I'm like super excited for you guys to watch it, if you guys are gonna watch it. Because there's just
How are you watching it?
I have it.
Oh, okay. See,
Yeah.
I don't have it.
She owns the physical media.
I do.
Always big proponents of physical media we are here on Red Spotlight.
But there's just like, I don't know, because I have seen it before, obviously, but it's just, that one, it had been a while. So like going back and watching it like all over again, and then just like with everything that's going on, it just has like a different meaning now. So yeah, it was
From
it was
what the
fun,
clips
though.
you've seen, it looks like a good show. I have a problem though
Yeah.
about watching
Oh.
Korra.
God, here we go.
No, I haven't seen any episodes. I want to see the show, and I'm sure it's great. There's something about this, like how I felt about The Irishman. There's just something so inherently depressing to me about watching characters like Aang, Katara, Toph, and Zuko as decrepit, ancient, old people. In
Aang
the
isn't in the
series.
show.
Yeah, if it makes
know,
you feel better, Aang's dead.
Everybody
Um,
everybody else is alive.
They're all
though, and
dead.
they're not
So
necessarily all okay.
Yeah.
No, but
If it
yeah,
makes you
I
feel
get what
better.
you mean. That's what most people had a problem with, that they wanted more of like the original.
Well, let me be clear. I don't necessarily need more of Team Avatar and their adventures, or want more of it. I just have it makes me feel sad to see like them as old people.
Yeah.
It kind of makes me feel like, well, fuck, is my life gonna go just like that? Like, I don't want to
I mean,
think
it
about
literally
these
is.
things.
The show is like, it shows you all that they accomplished beyond the original show, which
Right.
I like. And then, but not only that, it shows you what they accomplished, what they kind of failed at, and just kind of like, that's what I didn't understand. Like when people say that they don't like because like the original cast is in there, but it's like, but you do get to see that, like you get to see what became of them.
Right.
So I don't know.
I've seen clips of the show though. I've seen
Yeah,
Iroh
yeah.
in the spirit world with Korra. So,
yeah, but
I also don't know if I want to live in an Avatar world without Iroh in it.
I know.
It's just it's hard.
Yeah.
You know.
He's
But
best.
they have other characters, I feel, that they don't have the same impact as Iroh, but they're pretty close. And then there's just like other than like the traumatizing moments, there's other moments that are so emotional, and just like they get to me like hard, because it talks about like well, I don't know, I can't really say, because yeah. But I don't know, I feel like those moments are kind of better than The Last Airbender, like the emotional moments. So I don't know. I
Sacrilegious.
like it. But yeah, that's what I've been watching. I finished it, so we'll see what I watch next.
There's no third Avatar series for you to watch
No. Yet.
yet. They should just give him money for a third animated show.
I love
mean, Netflix.
like the creators.
Netflix. Hey, if the live action show does well, who knows what the possibilities are?
By the way, can I just say that like The Last Airbender came out right before all this shit happened, and it's like, I don't know. It's fucking weird.
Are you blaming The Last Airbender?
No,
No!
I'm saying like it's just weird, and it's like, well, maybe that's.
Peter,
know.
can you stop taking people intentionally out of context for your own amusement?
No.
Yep.
Yeah. Anything else to say before we close today?
Just be nice. I don't know.
Be kind, rewind.
As you are aware, we're going to be doing a lot of podcasts. So we'll have shows on Avatar, the inspirational series, To the Table is back, shield, and so forth. So keep an eye out for all those episodes on this little podcast. We're working overdrive in part because we've got plenty of time, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon, it seems. So stay safe. If you can't, stay home. If you go out and protest, take every precaution. Remember, we're in a pandemic. And as bad as things have gotten, it can always get worse. So, with all that, thank you for listening. I know it wasn't necessarily what we usually do when we take up most of the podcast talking about, heavy issues like this, but I am appreciative of those who are willing to listen to our perspective. And of course, encourage those of you who listen to have discourse and communication. Part of the thing that frustrates me the most is that we don't listen to each other. We don't sit down and talk with each other. Part of why I love Bridge of Spies so much is because that's kind of what the message of the movie is. If we just sit down and talk with each other, we can find solutions to our problems instead of, warfare. So, with all that, thank you for listening. Stay under the spotlight for more content. And until next time, bye-bye.